It is 6 p.m. here in Cairo, time for Egypt News, and we start straight away with the main headlines. President Al-Sisi back home after co-chairing the first Russia-Africa summit. Eight people dead in the Iraqi protests as thousands took to the streets. And more Russian military police arrive in Syria under peace deal with Turkey. Welcome back. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi returned home after concluding a visit to Russia, where he co-chaired the first Russia-Africa summit held in the Black Sea resort of Sochi. The summit discussed means of expanding economic cooperation and trading partnerships between Russia and the African continent. On the sidelines of the two-day summit, President al-Sisi and the Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed held talks over the resumption of technical negotiations over the Ethiopian Renaissance Dam on the Blue Nile. The presidency said that the two leaders had agreed that an independent technical committee seeking an agreement on the dam's operation would immediately press on with the work. The House of Representatives condemned the European Parliament statement on the human rights state in Egypt as unacceptable interference in the Egyptian affairs. The statement said that the European Parliament has no right to evaluate the other countries on basis of falsified, imbalanced reports by certain non-governmental parties suspected of having links to the terrorist groups. The House of Representatives, meanwhile, said that Egypt has been steadily improving the human rights status out of a free political will and the self-sustained conviction that the human rights are an integral part of the comprehensive development drive. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry led a delegation participating in the 18th summit of the heads of states and governments of the non-aligned movement, the NAM, in Baku, Azerbaijan. Shoukry will deliver a speech before the summit on behalf of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, which will focus on the regional conditions and on the Egyptian vision for the outstanding international challenges, on top of them, dangers posed by terrorism. The summit will last for 2 days under the theme of upholding Bandung principles to ensure an adequate response to the challenges of the contemporary world. Iraqi and Jordanian foreign ministers voiced the backing for the efforts to protect the Egyptian water rights in the Nile River and to seek a negotiated solution over the Ethiopian Renaissance Dam in order to safeguard the rights of Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia. This came at a tripartite meeting joined by the Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry, Jordanian Foreign Minister Ayman al-Safadi, and the Iraqi Foreign Minister Muhammad Ali al-Hakim on the sidelines of the Non-Aligned Movement Summit in Baku. The meeting also discussed joint relations, means of enhancing economic development and cultural cooperation, as well as continuing the political consultations among the three Arab states. Regional developments, including the Palestinian cause, Libyan and Yemeni crises, and the fight against terrorism, were also probed. On the sidelines of the Baku summit, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry also held a meeting with the Argentinian candidate for the post of Secretary General of the International Air Transport Association, the IATA. The General Commander of the Armed Forces, Minister of Defense and Military Production Lieutenant Mohammad Zaki, was back home wrapping up an official visit to China. Leading a high-level delegation, Zaki held several talks on means of promoting mutual military cooperation between Egypt and China.
يمر العالم بمفترق طرق تستمر مصر كما كانت دوما ركيزة أساسية لاستعادة الأمن والاستقرار في الشرق الأوسط. ولا يسعني إلا أن أؤكد رفض مصر للتدخل الأجنبي في الشؤون العربية، فقد آن الأوان أن تستعاد مؤسسات الدولة الليبية وتقوم مصر بدور نشط لجمع الفرقاء الليبيين. إن نزيف الدم في سوريا وغياب الأفق السياسي أمر لم يعد مقبولا استمراره، فالمطلوب واضح: وحدة سوريا وسلامتها الإقليمية. لا تدخر مصر جهدا لدعم وحدة اليمن وسلامته الإقليمية. وفي وسط تلك التحديات التي يموج بها النظام الدولي، إلا أن مصر استطاعت أن تحافظ على استقرارها وسط محيط إقليمي شديد الاضطراب في ضوء ارتباط الأمن القومي العربي بما فيه أمن الخليج العربي بأمن مصر. على البشرية أن تستعيد جوهر إنسانيتها والوصول إلى عالم أكثر أمنا ورخاء لأجيالنا القادمة.
Welcome back. At least 8 demonstrators were killed in the renewed anti-government rallies in the Iraqi capital after calls for the renewed protests on Friday, which marks a year since the Prime Minister Adil Abdul Mahdi came to power. The details in the upcoming report.
Demonstrators protesting at corruption and economic hardship were back to streets in Iraq on Friday, less than a month after previous protests that were violently confronted, leaving 149 protesters dead and more than 6,000 others wounded. Protesters set fire to offices belonging to the Shiite political party Hikmah movement and to the Shiite militia group Asa'ib Ahl al-Haq in the central Samawa city in the southern province of Muthanna. In Baghdad, at least one protester has died on Friday after he was struck in the face by a gas canister. More than 200 were wounded as thousands gathered in Baghdad's Tahrir Square. Some attempts were made to march to the Green Zone, which houses government buildings and foreign embassies, when they were stopped by security forces. More than 16 years after U.S. invasion, many Iraqis are living in poverty, have limited access to clean water, electricity, basic health care, or decent education as the country tries to recover from years of conflict. The renewed protests pose the biggest challenge to Prime Minister Adil Abdul Mahdi since he took office just 1 year ago amid promises of reforms and a broad cabinet reshuffle. In an address late on Thursday night, Abdul Mahdi warned that any collapse of government would drag Iraq into further turmoil. Also, the country's top cleric, Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani, urged calm on all sides during his sermon on Friday. In recent weeks, he has criticized handling of the protests. A damning report released this week by a government committee set up by Abdul Mahdi concluded that 149 civilians were killed because security forces used excessive force and live fire to quell the protests.
Anti-corruption protesters cut off major roads in Lebanon for the 9th day, pledging to keep paralyzing the country despite an offer by the president to meet the representatives. The demonstrators, who have thronged towns and cities across Lebanon, prompting the closure of banks and schools, have been demanding the removal of the entire political class, accusing it of systematic corruption. Numbers have declined since Sunday, when hundreds of thousands took over Beirut and the other cities in the largest demonstrations in years, but could grow again over the weekend. The Russian Defense Ministry said that around 300 more Russian military police have arrived in Syria under an accord between Ankara and Moscow, which halted the Turkish military incursion into northeast Syria. The deal, reached on Tuesday by President Tayyip Erdogan and President Vladimir Putin of Russia, requires that the Russian military police and the Syrian border guards remove all the Kurdish YPG militia from within 30 kilometers of the Turkish border by next Tuesday. The Yemeni southern separatists have struck a power-sharing deal with the internationally recognized government aimed at ending a conflict simmering within the country's civil war. The deal would see the Southern Transitional Council, the STC, handed a number of ministries and the government returned to the city of Aden. The warring factions have been holding talks mediated by Saudi Arabia in the kingdom city of Jeddah. STC officials currently in Riyadh said that they have signed the final draft of the agreement and are waiting for the joint signature within days with the attendance of Yemeni President Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi and the STC leader Aidarus Az-Zuwaidi. The Libyan House of Representatives rejected a talk by the Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan over his country's right to interfere in the Libyan affairs as a legacy from the former Ottoman Empire. A statement by the parliament said that the Turkish support to the terrorist and the militant groups controlling Tripoli is unacceptable, stressing that Libya is an independent sovereign state that has the ability to defend itself against the attempts to treat it as a colony. And the European Union members delayed the decision on how long to postpone the next week Brexit deadline, giving British Prime Minister Boris Johnson space to push for the early general election. Senior diplomats said that they would reconvene on Monday or Tuesday next week, thus perhaps fewer than 72 hours before Britain is set to break away from the bloc. Johnson is struggling to call an election he hopes will give him a majority to pass the divorce deal that he struck with the European Union leaders last week. But the British opponents want to know whether Europe will agree to delay the departure before agreeing to a snap poll. Italy's Eni announced the discovery of a new oil well in Abu Sidri development area located in the Gulf of Suez. The Italian giant said that the new well was discovered in cooperation with the Egyptian General Petroleum Company, adding that work at the new discovery will start within the upcoming few days, with expected initial flow of 5,000 barrels per day. Eni noted that the new discovery in South Sidri is estimated to contain nearly 200 million barrels. And still in Egypt, the stock market lost nearly £4.3 billion during last week's dealings, with the market capital reaching nearly £310 billion, down 16% compared to the previous week. A weekly report released by the stock market showed that the bourse indices traded mixed, with the benchmark EGX 30 index adding 1%, while the medium-capped index, the EGX 70, falling 0.4%. The medium-capped index, the EGX 100, was also down 0.6%. The overall transactions and dealings increased to reach £7.7 billion. Geopolitical tensions, muted economic data, and the mixed earnings stem in the global stocks today, with the sterling languishing over a one-week low amid a new bout of Brexit uncertainty. European stock markets traded broadly softer, with the pan-regional stock 600 slipping 0.3%, while Germany's DAX eased 0.2% and Britain's FTSE fell 0.4%. And the French CAC 40 index was slightly up 0.1%. Across Asia, Japan's Nikkei finished up 0.2%, and the Chinese blue chips gained 0.6%, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng fell 0.28%. And the oil prices were lower after rising yesterday on a surprise drop in the American crude inventories and the hopes for market-supporting actions by the OPEC and its allies. West Texas Intermediate, the WTI crude, was down 0.28% to $56.07 a barrel, and the global benchmark Brent crude dipped 0.31% to $61.48 a barrel. Yesterday, the oil steadied above $61 a barrel, as concern over the demand outlook offset a surprise drop in the American crude inventories and the prospect of further action by the OPEC and its allies to support the market. Zamalek beat Génération Foot of Senegal 1-0 and secured a group place in the African Champions League. The White Knights won the last 32 tie on away goals after losing the first leg 2-1 in Dakar last month. Zamalek, five-time African champions, go into Group A with Primeiro Agosto of Angola, Zaska United of Zambia, and TP Mazembe of the Democratic Republic of Congo, another trophy holder, on 5 occasions. In anticipation of rising weather instability, the cabinet today tasked the officials in provinces overlooking the Mediterranean Sea, the Suez Canal, and in both northern and southern Sinai to raise the alert state to the maximum degree. A statement also urged the citizens to remain at home unless for the urgent necessities and recommended the drivers to abide by the strict safety rules while riding on highways. An emergency theater of operations was convening to coordinate and deal swiftly with any emergencies. Meanwhile, the national airliner said that the passengers traveling from Alexandria's Burj Al Arab airport are advised to be at the airport at least 3 hours prior to the inbound and the outbound flights. A statement said that the measure is meant to ensure the passengers are at hand to finish the travel papers before the takeoff, as the Egyptian Meteorological Authority said that more rain is expected in the northern parts of the country till tomorrow. And this brings us to the end of Egypt News for today. Thank you for watching and goodbye.